I think you could make a very strong argument, and I think a lot of people perhaps have, that government, at least the founding fathers in this country, realized that government sometimes was going to be big and messy. I had someone tell me many, many years ago, he's now serving in a legislative seat in a state far, far away, but he told me at the time, he said, these people, for instance, they actually intended some gridlock at times because it was the way you move things along. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing a lot of stories come out of our own state capital, and I was reviewing some of the elements of our state constitution this morning while I was at my desk. And let's be honest, those people who put that together too, as well, also expected that government not necessarily was always going to run just quickly and smoothly, that there are checks and balances, and those come from some of the restrictions on the legislature or things legislators are supposed to do as they actually put together a legislative session. I'll put it that way. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. We're at 45 today, looking for a high of 56. And just a quick note, the weather service this morning of Auto Ranch, which is, for those listening who have struggled with wondering where that is, it's in Mountain Home, if that helps. Right off the highway exit. We're joined this morning by State Representative Priscilla Giddings. And Representative Giddings is a, well, they would say a newcomer to the state legislature. She was elected to her first office last fall, and by a wide margin, we should point out, in excess of 40 points. Her background is very unique. There are a handful of other legislators who have some military background as well, but not many any longer. She spent a number of years on active duty in the Air Force. She's a pilot. She's now in the Air Force Reserves. She has the rank, I believe, still of major. She may have been promoted in the last few days. She'll correct me if she has been. But first of all, Representative, welcome to our program.
Good morning, Bill. What a pleasure to be on with you today.
And I thank you. We wanted to maybe set the record straight, too, because I did a little bit of what I call biographical research by just pulling up Google, looking at some of the stories about you. And apparently there was a story done sometime last year during the election season by one of the newspapers in the state. And there's some confusion about you have a background flying A-10s, but your combat experience was in a different role.
That's correct, Bill, and we're all learning that a lot of our newspapers maybe don't get the complete story or truth on some of those issues. So I did want to set the record straight. I flew A-10s. I was active duty for 9 years, and I am still in the rank of a major. No, haven't been promoted to lieutenant colonel yet. My first assignment was in A-10s, and I do like to brag a little. I was the only woman in my class of A-10s, and I was awarded Top Gun, which meant my bombs and bullets hit closer to the target than any of my other colleagues.
I was going to say that takes some skill.
It does. It was a lot of fun. But my first assignment was in A-10s was overseas. I flew A-10s. I was overseas for about 3 years, and was a interesting opportunity. Can't say enough positive things about the A-10 and the role that it plays, especially for helping and supporting our troops on the ground. I did have the opportunity to fly them overseas, over Africa and the Middle East. But then our commander-in-chief, our previous commander-in-chief, really started taking huge force reductions and started closing down A-10 units. And my unit was one of those, and I was able to transfer into a different, it was kind of a top-secret program where we did more intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The role in Afghanistan changed from being able to drop bombs on bad guys to let's just find those bad guys and watch them. And so I moved over into that role. And my actual combat time, quote unquote, the way the Air Force defines it, was flying that other platform.
Now, we need to point out, no matter where you likely go, whether it be to a parade or into a Legion Hall or visiting a VFW, because of your veteran status, you're likely treated very well. We've done a much better job of treating our veterans over the last quarter century than we did in the quarter century before that. But it seems that in the Idaho legislature, that that veneration that we often give veterans, it doesn't go, your service doesn't go very far with a lot of your colleagues.
Well, I really do appreciate the support, being a veteran and still serving. And I would say, honestly, the people in Idaho are more respectful of our veterans than anywhere else I've traveled in the world. You know, Bill, I've been to goodness more than 30 countries throughout the world, and I can't emphasize how grateful I am for Idaho and the people in Idaho. That being said, there's only about 10% of the 105 legislators that have any veteran experience, and so for a lot of them, it's a somewhat of a foreign concept that they don't quite understand. And I will agree with you in that I have been really surprised at just the way I've been kind of mistreated by some of my colleagues, and that is really alarming. And that's not something I ever experienced in the military, and so that caused some great concerns for me.
In fact, last week you gained some, I guess, in the some newspaper editorialists' infamy in their eyes, but on the other hand, you gained a lot of respect among some people too as well because you forced an issue on a constitutional matter. Judging by some of the newspaper coverage, you would have thought you'd done something illegal, but you called for the reading of a bill, and you pointed out that it was constitutional, and there was nothing that you were doing that was out of place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage your listeners, if they haven't already, to. I recently published an article called Nepotism in Idaho and kind of explaining what happened last week. And I think it's where we are in our form of government. We're constitutional republic, and that means a lot. One, it means that we need to be abiding by the Constitution. And two, it means we need to be trusting the representatives that we elect to make those decisions for us. And right now, that's not happening. And that's what is of the greatest alarm to me. And as a military person, I have been trained how important it is to follow the laws and the regulations and the procedures because they were written for a reason, and usually it's for safety or for someone's protection. And so it's so important that we follow the laws. And so to show up in the most prestigious lawmaking body in the state of Idaho and then in the greatest United States, the greatest country in the world, and to see that we're not even following our own Constitution, that just blew my mind. And then to dive down into it deeper, Bill, I'm a Republican. I'm a straight line, middle of the road Republican, and we have an Idaho Republican platform that has some incredible concepts of just fiscal responsibility and lowering taxes and reducing regulations and property rights and a government that reinforces family. And just in the last 2 weeks, our legislature is taking actions against those basic Republican principles and even against our Constitution. And so I started to see that, and I was in the middle of it, and I couldn't take it. That's not what the people elected me to do. And so I did. I tried to hold them accountable and say, hey, in the Constitution it says we're supposed to read these bills on their final passage. And every day we just gloss over that because Speaker Bedke from District 27 is just for convenience sake doesn't want to abide by that rule. And if that's the way that he wants it to run, then we need to change the Constitution, and we need to bring the people involved into this process and not allow such an abuse of power and let one man make that decision.
It's 8:16, and our guest is State Representative Priscilla Giddings, and she's joining us this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 45. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story. Representative, I think that I saw a newspaper editorial on Sunday which said that the legislature should be doing this so we can move things along quickly and we don't get nonsensical bills on the floor. And I thought, they're all for the First Amendment over at the newspaper, but apparently when it comes to other constitutional issues, for expediency, we should be dropping them. Do you think that there's a just the nature of the support seems to be that if there are Republicans out there who are demanding constitutional fealty, there's something wrong with you. That's what they're trying to portray.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to portray, but they're failing miserably. I think the people in Idaho realize that they're not getting the full truth from these some of your mainstream media outlets. They've lost their followers, and they're grasping at 10% truth, trying to sell papers. And I think people are tuning into your radio show and to social media and to alternative news sites to figure out what's really going on. And so the issue that you bring up specifically is this hurry up and cram these 40-page bills down your throat to save taxpayers' money. And to me, the irony and the dichotomy of that is just, it's not common sense. It's not logical. They strategically hold bills that I would say, Speaker Bedke and his team will hold the bills that they really want passed until the last week or two, and then they will release them, and then you have literally other legislators have maybe a day or two to review them and to get outside guidance and perspective before we start voting on them. And to me, that is just absolutely wrong. It's not transparent to the people. It doesn't give the people an opportunity to really dig into these potential future laws and understand the consequences of them.
Our guest, of course, is Priscilla Giddings. She's a state representative, and you hail from Whiteburg, right up in the somewhere in the northern Panhandle.
Yes, Phil. I graduated from high school, from Salmon River High School in Riggins, and I built a house overlooking the Salmon River in Whitebird. My mother was the principal at the high school there, and my father is the county sheriff, and I am proud to call Whitebird home.
And your father was as well in the Air Force at one time when he was younger.
He was, yes. He was a veteran of Vietnam, and then I have a brother that was in the Army and another brother that was in the Marines.
If you can hold on the line for a few minutes, we have to take a short break. We've got more coming up with State Representative Priscilla Giddings. And in fact, we're going to be talking in a couple of minutes about her reading of a bill. Actually, when she objected, they said, "All right, you're going to read it." And she did. And we'll talk to her about that coming up in just a moment. Uh, the attempt to, I guess, intimidate her is probably not going to work when you consider her background. That's on the way in just a couple of minutes. Short break. It's 46 at 8:20. And just a quick note, we've been telling you, yeah, there we go. My voice is coming back slowly. I think I'm going through puberty all over again at 55. I've been telling you about our friends at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert, and you may be asking, why would you get in touch with these people? Well, compassion. Dr. Christine Pickup and her staff pride themselves on caring for each individual with customized and personal treatment plans. Mount Harrison Audiology cares about your health goals and will work with you to provide the best care possible. And we recommend you give Mount Harrison Audiology a telephone call for an appointment. 208 312 0957. That's 208 312 0957. We'll be getting to our guest again in just a moment. State Representative Priscilla Giddings is joining us on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com with Bill Colley this morning. We're at 46. The weather tonight, probably not even, we'll stay in the 40s for an overnight low. I don't think, though, you can completely say you're done with the furnace. And if you're having some issues, as we've been through a very difficult winter, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. They'll come out and they'll get the job done right, and they'll get it done right the first time. Problem-free cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The telephone number 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. State Representative Priscilla Giddings last week objected and made a point on constitutional law, or the Idaho State Constitution, about reading a bill aloud, and then her colleagues, an overwhelming number of them, decided they would go along with her, but they insisted that she read the bill, and she spent well over an hour doing that. First of all, I guess we should ask you, did you actually enjoy doing it, or did it? I don't know that you were in any way intimidated by it.
No, Bill, not intimidated at all. I was quite surprised. it's normally the clerk's job to read the bills. And so when Representative Kelly Packard stood up, and she'll be running for lieutenant governor here in the next year, and she asked me to read the bill, it almost seemed like a political play, and so I was surprised. But my point in reading the bill wasn't to hurt the clerk or to disgruntle the clerk to have to read the bill. My point was to follow the Constitution and to ensure that the people knew what was in the bill. There was a lot of interesting things inside the bill I wanted the people to know about. So when they asked me to read the bill, I said, sure. I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm very comfortable reading the bill. And it's funny, I've had more compliments from people telling me how wonderfully I read. So that part of it was fun. And this intimidation technique was kind of ironic, too. I had a couple of my fighter pilot colleagues hit me up on Facebook, because now my article has gotten more than 1,000 Facebook shares, and one of my fighter pilot friends said, well, Altoid, which is my call sign, said, now they are learning why we named you Altoid. And that's based off of the slogan, because I'm curiously strong. And so I thought that was quite fitting. But what it revealed was more of a power play. And you're right, I wasn't going to be intimidated by that.
And then there was another opportunity to try and open up this process, and a vote was held. It went down to defeat. You were trying to have a more bottom-up approach instead of top-down. But I keep hearing the establishment Republicans say there are only 6 of them, but you at least got 13 votes on this proposal. So it seems that the 6 have found some allies and more than doubled the size.
Yeah, Bill, it's been very interesting to watch. For the last 20 minutes, we've been talking really kind of about the abuse of power from the top. But also, the other concern that we are really identifying is that there's some broken processes inside the legislature. And what that has to do with is the way that bills are created, how they get assigned by the Speaker to specific chairmen of committees, and which committees get to hear those bills. And they've kind of created it and turned it into a very complicated process, so that essentially 1 to 2 or 3 people can control which bills are talked about and reviewed and voted on. And a lot of Idahoans, I'm getting hundreds of emails where they have a bill trapped in a chairman's shredder drawer, I call it, and they're frustrated because that's not the way our representative form of government is supposed to work. These are just basic principles and highlighting that the process is broken. But specifically, there are House rules that we follow, and one of the rules, rule number 45, says that if a bill has been stuck in a committee, then a legislator can make a motion on the House floor to pull that bill up to the House floor, and then we would take a vote on it and maybe discuss it there on the House floor. And a fellow legislator made that motion to, hey, let's bring that bill up and talk about it and vote on it here. And the interesting thing is that specific bill was written by a Democrat, Representative Rubel, and she wrote the bill, and it basically says, for a bill to get a hearing, if you have 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats who all agree that the bill should have a hearing, then the chairman has to give it a hearing. And so this would have brought great transparency to the way that our process works and for the people. And it was a Democrat who was pleading for it. And the establishment still said no. They like the top-down approach. And so that specific vote, we actually got a few Democrat supporters to jump on board. And so it's not that there is a we. There's no formal group. There's no we. We're all legislators representing 45,000 people. And I think there are lots of us that are just trying to encourage other legislators to use common sense and to support the will of the people and not let the abuse of power control our state and our state laws.
We have a break coming up in about a minute, but your colleague who tried to bring that bill forward, just a reminder, he's going to be joining us tomorrow just after 8 o'clock news, and that would be State Representative Ron Nate from Rexburg. And he knows a little bit about dollars and cents because he's got a background in teaching that. Before we go to the break, just very quickly, if people wanted to get in touch with you at the office, we'll have more coming up in just a few minutes. But if they wanted to get in touch with you, what would they do? How should they go about doing that?
Yeah, that's great, Bill. My phone number is area code 208-332-1033. My email is pgiddings@house.idaho.gov, and I also have a Facebook page. Just type in Priscilla Giddings, and you will find my Facebook page, and I would love to hear from your callers.
I want to thank her for passing that along, and we have more coming up with Priscilla Giddings in just a couple of minutes. State Representative joining us this morning on air. It's 48. Call it 8:30. We've got well, high temperature today, maybe only in the mid 50s, but much nicer tomorrow, and actually through the weekend. More details ahead. Our guest this hour is State Representative Priscilla Giddings. She's joining us here on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 8:34, and we're at 48. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. And just a quick note, I was joking yesterday about getting closer and closer to retirement. Not that I really have a hard job, but, if I ever do it, I've got to have some plans in place. And I've been recommending Waddell and Reed right here in Twin Falls on Eastland Drive. They've been around since 1937. This is a company that was among the first to offer mutual funds. In fact, Waddell and Reed offers two mutual fund families, investing by a conservative nature. Do they know what they're doing? Well, hey, they've been in business 80 years, obviously. And what they'll do is they have an approach when it comes to planning. Well, they'll sit down with you and look at each piece of the puzzle that you have, and they'll try to build proper expectations. At Waddell and Reed, they build a plan around your needs and goals. Waddell and Reed helps people manage money, and Waddell and Reed takes planning personally. Representative Giddings, here we are down to just a handful of days left in this state legislative session. Is there anything that we should be on the lookout for, or that you're on the lookout for?
Absolutely, Bill. I'm always on the lookout. But the one thing I think before highlighting some of the big concerns that I'm on the lookout for, I would like to highlight some of the good things that I've seen happen. As one of the few veterans in the legislature, I really have a heart for supporting our veterans in any way. And so far this legislative session, we've had two bills that are very military friendly. One of those is House Bill 18 that allows all the members of our National Guard out at Gowan, no matter what their technician status, to be able to receive tuition assistance. And that will go into effect on July the 1st of this year. So that will really provide an incentive for a lot of our guardsmen out there. And the other big one that is a positive, it's supposed to be voted on in the Senate today. And if they pass it, which I hope and I believe that they will, it will go into law, and that is House Bill 93 that will allow members of the armed forces who are not Idaho residents but are here in Idaho, either on they're stationed here or they're TDY here, they're working here. It gives them the opportunity to carry a concealed handgun. The provision of the law before is it's very complex, and it left out members of the armed forces, and that was not, I think, good or healthy for our state. And so I'm really encouraged by that, and that helps our members of our armed forces.
I just got to share with you very quickly. I have an email from a Gold Star mother. She says, tell your guests to stand your ground, finish the fight, never give up. She says, take it from an outsider. There is nothing you can do to make them like you, but do your job. And then she says, you are intimidating them, my dear. So there are people out there, obviously, who do support you. And we should point out, when we asked you to join us on the program, word got around very quickly. And I don't know what the pipeline was, but we've had some reaction even from the other party asking if they can come on and give some thoughts too. It's almost as if at the moment it seems like we're dealing with three parties. We're dealing with the The mainstream Republicans, we're dealing with the constitutional Republicans, and then we're dealing with Democrats. And let's be honest, your group is almost as large now as the Democrat representation.
Well, Bill, I just that that is good. What I like about it is that we're opening the dialogue and we're getting people involved. I think people are tired of parties. I think people, I mean, the majority of Idaho voters are independent. They're not registered with either party. And so this isn't about parties. This is about an abuse of power, about fixing a broken process, and then about, hanging on to our freedoms as the best state in the union. So I'm proud to take a stand on that. I will tell you, I am having fun. A lot of people are saying, man, you're strong. It must be hard. And honestly, I have never had so much fun. It's a constant mental, three-dimensional chess game. And I enjoy mental challenges. And I also enjoy just working with great people and Idahoans and hearing from them. I kind of have a fun little story about having fun in that I am very competitive, as you might imagine.
Right. I saw that in your biography.
Yes, and so there's been a couple situations in the legislature where I've had the opportunity to compete against the other legislators. The first one was a Steps for School challenge where the Blue Cross of Idaho would donate $3,000 to an elementary school in the legislator's district who got the most steps during the month of February.
Can you hold on to that thought for just a moment? We have a short break. We can tease people with the upcoming end of that story in just a couple of minutes.
Definitely.
We're joined on the air this morning by State Representative Priscilla Giddings. We also expect in the next hour to be joined in studio by Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. And there's some legislative news going on there, although we should point out it's almost identical to what's happening in the Fish and Wildlife Department in Washington State. We've got a high right now, a daytime high. We're up to 49. We're at 840. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Our guest joining us this morning from the state capitol in Boise is State Representative Priscilla Giddings. We're going to spend about 15 more minutes with her. It's coming up on 8:43. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. We're at 50. And also, we'll take some of your telephone calls, too, if you have a comment or question for the representative while she's joining us on air. And as I pointed out, her colleague Ron Nate is scheduled to join us tomorrow, and another one of her colleagues, Dorothy Moon, likely going to be joining us on a program next week. And these are all people who are relative newcomers to Boise, and they've all had unique experiences in the legislature. And they'll be sharing some of those over the course of the next few days. I do want to mention, speaking of sharing, I just want to quickly mention the total body transformation system, of which I've been a student of for the last several months, and I've dropped somewhere in the neighborhood now of 70 pounds. I have a weigh-in coming up sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll keep you posted on that, how I'm doing. A lot of people are asking me about the diet, and I've got to tell you, it has scientific support behind it. Some of the leading researchers, medical researchers from some of the most prestigious universities in the country, Columbia, Cornell, and Tufts being among those. You'll burn 6 times more fat and lose 8 times more weight than normal results from diet and exercise alone. The meal replacement plan, healthier than most of the meals you were likely eating, and I've been telling people, the cost is about the same as the meals that you'll be replacing. And you can still have a healthy amount of calories every day. The average participant will drop 22 pounds and lose 4 inches off their waist in just 60 days. It is backed up with an unconditional full money-back guarantee. If you'd like to know more, call my friend, Don Chandler. He's at 208-731-3560. Don Chandler, he's here in Twin Falls at 731-3560. State Representative Priscilla Giddings joining us this morning, as I mentioned. And you were telling us a story about a little bit of competition that took place between you and some of your legislative colleagues. And there was going to be a recipient, obviously a charitable recipient at the end of all of this. We'll ask you to finish telling the story.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great tie-in to your story, Bill, about dropping 70 pounds. I just want to congratulate you on
Thanks.
that. I'm sure you feel so much better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think physical fitness is so important, especially for our children, and that's why the Blue Cross of Idaho put on this competition, was to have legislators get engaged in physical fitness and encourage children in Idaho to do the same. And so for the month of February, all the legislators used a Fitbit and got as many steps as they could, and I ended up taking first place, beating all the other legislators in that competition. So that was a lot of fun.
So you are intimidating then.
Well, maybe. But here's my favorite competition story, Bill. On Monday night, so just a few nights ago, the Fraternal Order of Police hosted a legislative shooting competition. And so we had a whole bunch of legislators go out to the range, and the Fraternal Order of Police and some of our great Idaho ammunition stores and facilities provided the ammo. And at the end of the night, the challenge was with a Glock 45 to put 8 rounds on the target in the quickest amount of time. And I'm happy to report that I did it in 2.9 seconds, and
Wow.
I beat all of them.
Oh, wow. You'll have to come on our gun show sometime.
So the competition is fun. You know, a lot of people, some people maybe get discouraged with some of the things that are coming out of the legislature, and I just want everyone to be assured that that we're engaging in a good, healthy battle that I think is part of our republic form of government.
And we should also point out, too, as well, that more than media maybe creates a lot of this sort of dissension, but on most bills, most Republicans are on the same page, it seems, from what I've been reading.
Well, Bill, I don't think I agree with you. I think there is a real the definition of Republican is being challenged heavily, especially here in Idaho. I think that the media, the main kind of mainstream media outlets, try to have Idahoans believe that we're a conservative state, that we're a Republican state, that we're one of the most Republican states in the Union. But when you start to look at what bills we're passing, and when we're passing bills that only other states like California and Washington have passed, I don't buy it. We're not really acting like a Republican state. And so some of those examples that I can give you just here in the last week, and kind of to summarize, you know, we're talking about there's a bit of an abuse of power right now in the Idaho legislature. We've got some broken processes, but also a huge telltale sign that we're not as Republican as we think is that the liberal agenda is progressing here in Idaho. And you can just look at our Speaker of the House. His voting record mirrors the Democratic minority leader's voting record. So I think we need to re-examine our Republican principles and start holding our legislators accountable to what our Idaho Republican platform really says. A couple bills that I think would be a great example that have already passed. One bill passed specifically had to do with requiring sign language interpreters to be licensed. It was a huge growth of government, and it really limits the people. It limits business opportunities, and it's going to cost the state a lot of money. So essentially, the bill passed. It's become law just here in the last month or so, saying that if you want to be a sign language interpreter, if you do not have a license, you will be guilty of a misdemeanor. And you can't be licensed if you're under the age of 21. So you have maybe a high school student who is fluent in sign language, and they get out of high school and they aren't able to become interpreters until they become 21. And that just doesn't follow sound, logical Republican principles. Another huge bill that's coming up, we might vote on it either today or tomorrow, it's House Bill 190. It is a huge growth of government. It's carelessly spending our taxpayer money to give to students who have. It's an education bill, so I really hope that I heard you're going to talk with Representative Moon. She is an expert on this subject, and essentially the bill uses taxpayer money to give students who dropped out of college and have not been in college for at least 3 years. They can apply for a scholarship and get $3,000 per academic year for 4 years, all paid for by your taxpayer money.
Wow. Didn't see that one coming. We have
Yeah.
we have a telephone caller, I think, looking to reach us. Our guest is, of course, State Representative Priscilla Giddings. And caller, you're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
It's funny you guys are even talking about this because I've been hearing on your station lately about some bill that they're trying to pass to regulate yoga instructors. This stuff's absurd. I can see regulating, say, contractors. I'm cool with that. I'm glad they did that. Yoga instructors, why do they need to regulate this stuff? It's not going to cause any harm to not have a license to be a yoga instructor. Of all the things, I cannot believe I heard that, and nobody squawks about it.
And I want to thank him for the call. The yoga instructor situation was one that I just raised my eyebrows at as well.
Yeah, it's quite ludicrous where we're coming up with these ideas. They're not Republican values or principles, and it's all to grow government, to create government jobs, and to take away people's freedoms. And I absolutely don't support those concepts and ideas.
It's 8:51, and we're going to call it 50. Our guest is State Representative Priscilla Giddings, joining us here this morning with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. When you mentioned Speaker Bedke's voting record, I looked it up the other day. American Conservative Union gave him a 60% rating. If you contrast that with your former boss, U.S. Senator Mike Crapo, he has one of 98%. So we can do the math here. We have some people in government who are very good conservatives and other people who apparently, according to the ACU ranking, are nowhere near that.
You're spot on, Bill. And that's what the people and the voters need to know and be aware of.
We have another caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Priscilla Giddings. Go ahead. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air. Turn the radio down in the background.
I think you need to take Bedke's place, Patricia.
Priscilla, that is. Yeah. Well, hey, can we add to that? Of course, your name probably gets confused quite a bit, but can we add to that that there are a lot of people out there who tell you if you just get along to go along that you'll end up in leadership. That's one I hear about a lot. And can you confirm that at all?
Yeah, I could probably spend an hour talking about the current establishment and the go along to get along procedures. It's absolutely true, but I will say that the position of Speaker of the House is a tough position, and with leadership comes great responsibility, and all the more reason why a person in that position should not treat it like a hierarchical form of government or a form of leadership position, and instead it really is a servant leadership position where you have the opportunity to bring together people and to serve the public, not just have your will be done. But it is definitely, there's an environment in the legislature that they try to, they say kind of a military phrase, keep your toe to the line. And if you don't keep your toe to the line, there are consequences. And to me, that is not a healthy way to promote leadership inside of a legislative body.
Got about 2 minutes left. You made a comment in that editorial you wrote about how we can essentially keep everybody's feet to the fires. That does have an impact if you have public input.
Absolutely. I think it was a Reagan quote that I like to put in my newsletter, that if you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. And so we have to bring these things to light, and that's why I think it's so important that to encourage people to get involved. Find out what district you live in, find out who your legislators are, and maybe even seriously consider running for an elected office. I mean, we need good people to step up, and I think at the national level, we have seen that with what our new commander-in-chief is doing, and I think we need to see that happen here in Idaho, too, and it's going to take good people coming together to make it happen.
I didn't put you on the spot by asking you about where to locate the F-35s.
I absolutely want an F-35 at Gowan Field in Boise, and I think we're doing everything we can to try to make that happen.
I have not seen any of them flying yet, but I understand it's a very impressive machine.
It is. It makes you proud to be an American. Some people may say that the noise is very loud. It's a lot louder. The F-35 is a lot louder than the A-10. But I distinctly remember sleeping at the end of a flight line while I was deployed overseas. And at 5 in the morning, you would hear those engines spin up, and it would wake you up. But every time, you don't complain. You just smile, and you just say, that's the sound of freedom.
Amen. Well, I want to thank you very much. I know you have to get to the floor for some business. Hopefully, we'll be talking to you again sometime soon.
Absolutely, Bill. It's been a pleasure. I thank you for what you are doing, and we'll be in touch.
All right. God bless. Thank you.
And thank you. Bye-bye.
It's 8:56. State Representative Priscilla Giddings spending some time with us this morning. If you didn't know her name in the last couple of weeks, well, after what happened last week on the floor, when she read a bill aloud for in excess of well over an hour, she's getting her name. I guess put it this way: it's on the map. She's on the map now as well. And as I said, tomorrow morning we're going to be joined by one of her colleagues, who's also a thorn in the side to some of the leaders, Ron Nate. It's not that they're trying to be; it just sometimes it seems to work out that way. Hey, I want to also mention we've got Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game on the way in just a few minutes here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I need to mention my friends at Western Visions, Inc., which I had a chance, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, to tour a property, historic property in Declo that is being renovated, high-end renovation. High-end renovation means top-of-the-line materials, including lighting right down to LED lighting. And I saw the work taking place, and I'm going to go back and take a look at it when it's finished. If you'd like to know more, we've been recommending that you go to the website western-visions.com. That's western-visions.com. Western Visions combines innovative, cutting-edge design concepts with the very latest in materials, technology, and building technique to deliver the state-of-the-art finished product on time and on budget. And I said, also point out, yeah, I've got to get that word also out there. Also point out, they do these custom designs and builds. What they do, they'll do a residential remodel, they'll do kitchen and bathrooms, they'll do additions, and they'll actually do a business now and then as well. News is on the way from Fox at 9 o'clock. It's 51. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com.